Monday afternoon brought an exhausted John home from school. It was not due to fatigue from sports or from participating in anything particularly strenuous. Nothing beyond taking part with games Chris and Jamil would play, taking something of each other's and running away with it until they were caught. He came home to find a surprisingly calm house. Mamie was preparing food, Marie was in her room, Papa was at work. This was usual, but the calm came from Madeleine, Christelle and Glody not being there. And Tonton was out. This was the first time he had been in the house without them since they had arrived. He had gotten used to their sounds, Glody's happy laughter and shrieks of joy when he raised his arms up to be lifted, Madeleine's chatter with Mamie in the kitchen and Christelle's often silent observance. He did not mind their presence, but the reminder of how it felt to have peace and a little more space at home came sweet to him as though it were an unexpected gift from a stranger. He slumped onto the sofa with his school bag and shoes still on and switched on the TV and began watching the show of the young boy with the magic watch. His quiet moment was disturbed. Mummy came into the living room and told him to dilema and place his belongings in his room. Madeleine and the rest of the family came home. The wave of noise came flowing back. Jean did not know where they had come from, but from how they were dressed and the slow, steady walk with which they entered the house, it seemed important. He did not say much. Mummy met them at the door and dove straight into conversation. They had returned from a meeting with their immigration lawyer, several bus rides away. A young-looking man which made Madeleine suspicious of his experience and ability to fulfill his duties. His name was Mark and wore a dark blue suit, one size too big for him, but at least he wore a suit. He was accompanied by a translator named Anne-Sophie, who had a light tinge of red in her hair, and her most distinguishable feature was the glasses she wore hanging off her crooked nose. Mummy took Madeleine into the kitchen and closed the door behind them. She was clutching a wad of folders and files to her chest as if she was a student going to class. They spoke for a long time in the kitchen, but had forgotten to switch on the light, so whilst the sun was setting, it made their conversation appear twice as serious. Jean had returned to his room and was lying on the bed, halfway falling asleep, when he heard Mummy bellow out his name, calling him. He replied loudly and mumbled under his breath, annoyed because he knew he was being sent somewhere. Jean found it frustrating when Mummy summoned him because he knew she would ask him to do the things she could easily do herself. Pass the remote, go to the shop, or look for something she had lost. Lata, she said, telling him to go and get dressed, which meant he was being sent outside. Okay, Jean replied begrudgingly. He followed instructions, got dressed, and came back to the kitchen. Mema oil, she dumped the A4 folder onto his arms, Kindoko Sala photocopy, and gave him the money. Jean sighed and eventually went. However, he saw it as something she could do herself, and so he brewed with resentment. He slowly walked to the local internet cafe with the huge Dahabshid sign on its window everyone assumed was the name of the shop. It was owned by a Somali elder who was there every hour of the day. Everyone called him uncle. Maybe it was because of the familiarity of his demeanour, he felt like a relative. The internet cafe would, in the evenings, double up as a meeting ground for the elder Somali men, who would sit chewing cat and read, who would sit their ears and hearts could understand. Jean walked in, and the man smiled, showing his slightly stained brown teeth, welcoming him, for they had gotten familiar with each other the many times he came after school to use the computers. Internet? He asked, with his distinctive East African accent. No, photocopy, Jean groaned in reply. The man laughed in a hoarse tone, because he knew how much Jean despised making photocopies, the reason being they took so long and he always got the pages wrong. Jean was counting how many pages there were, so he could see how long it would take. When he noticed a few words pop out and grab his attention from one of the pages, he felt as though if he looked and read what was written, he would be breaking someone's trust, but the feeling of curiosity overpowered him. He saw Madeleine's full name and age. She was younger than his mum. He started reading. Kinshasa prisons are not the same as Western prisons. The heat, the smell, no windows, no sunlight, and here you sleep on the floor, and it is damp because it is where you go to the toilet. I was in prison for at least 8 days until I stopped counting. My daughter was with me, a few cells down. I could hear her. I do not know why they arrested us. Maybe for wearing the wrong clothes, maybe because they thought we had money. All I know is the city was on fire and the soldats were like dogs. I can still hear the echoes of their chants. I used to sell bread. Sometimes they would harass you because you are a woman, make you give them money or something more. At night it was the worst. There was no noise, nobody moving, no sound, which meant people were tired or asleep or worse. This is when it would begin. The soldats, the prison guards, the policemen, I did not know who. It was dark. They all had the same uniform, the same face, the same smell, the same intention. They came into your cell. You could hear their boots creeping. Even the cheap leather their shoes were made of squeaked. Then the clink of the metal, the key going into the keyhole and opening the cell gate. Then the clink to close it again. Every night was the same. The first time is when you hear this. The first time is when you scream the loudest, hoping somebody can hear you, hoping somebody comes. Nobody hears, nobody comes. Each time you scream a little less, a little quieter, until your screams were silent. I also heard my daughter scream. I had never heard her scream before. Then one day they let us out. My daughter was sitting waiting for me. It was the first time I saw her since. She looked at me with eyes as though the living thing inside her had stopped breathing. We went back home, but it was not the same. There was nothing for us here. And in these months, my daughter's belly started to grow. But she became blank, empty, staring into the nothing in front of her. It was not the same when our family in the village found out. For a long time, my daughter did not touch her son, so I nursed him. For a long time, she would sit and watch him, and sit and watch, never taking her eyes off her child. He became my child. It was a shame on our family. And then, yeah, that's part.